I did my doctoral work up in Hattiesburg, and I was born in Biloxi, so you call me a local kind of sometimes. And my wife over there, she doesn't think I'm a local because I grew up in Florida. But I was born in Biloxi, so I call myself a local. And today I just wanted to share a little bit about our rivers in our state here. And with Earth Day and all, I wanted to just wanted everyone to know, and hopefully I'll convey to you how wonderful place we live in and how special it is and unique. And hopefully you'll learn something about the region we live in and just how amazing it is. You know, Mississippi, we're not always first in everything. Sometimes we're last in a lot of things, money and schools and stuff. But I want to convey that we have the best rivers in the country, and I firmly believe that, and hopefully I can convey that today. And this is actually a picture of the Leaf River here up above Hattiesburg, and it's coming down right here. This is about 25 miles north of Hattiesburg, and this is actually a fish trap built by Native Americans. And I'm standing taking a picture on a big bluff that's behind me, and they chiseled the rock, the soapstone, right out of the bluff and blocked the river off there just to the water level so they could stand and fish. And you can trap fish on actually above and both ends, migratory fish as well. So it's really interesting that we have these rivers, and the rivers are so natural that a lot of the features are still there, and we can see. And a lot of people don't know about just what's around us in our state. So a little bit about the geology and the historical influence. Mississippi is unique. We don't have any lakes, no natural lakes. Anybody who's ever tried to show me one, I've disproven it. We got ephemeral ponds. We have little tiny ponds that fill up with rain, but only lakes we have are oxbows. You know, when the river gets cut off from itself, and we have a natural oxbow lake. Pretty much all we have. So rivers are our diamond. That's all we got all through the state. We don't have those groundwater aquifers that allow those lakes. We have no glacial input, old historical glacial lakes like a lot of parts of the country. So we just have rivers running straight north-south, mostly in the state. And we have a lot of different shallow aquifers that have input into these rivers. And because of all these rivers all over the state, we have Native American, early American dependence on these rivers. So all of our towns, all the artifacts we find, shows that the Native Americans were always around the rivers, right next to the rivers. And all of our towns that we have now, Jackson, the big cities, that's there because of the Pearl River that's there. You know, back in the day, you had to have a river for resources and transportation and all these things. And, of course, agriculture, the rivers allowed this place to be so successful with agriculture. All right, so the importance of fisheries in Mississippi, and then I'll get to what I'm going to talk about today, which is the endangered and threatened species that we have and what I've worked on in the past. And fishing in Mississippi is over $1 billion a year business with farming and culture and overall uniqueness. You can see our culture here on the coast. And, of course, we have Katrina and the oil spill that has impacted these fisheries. And, of course, we always have the catfish farms. This is a large industry in our state. And people just don't believe it. It really is $1 billion business. Everything that comes in, recreational, commercial, or fish farming, everything, it adds up. And it's a large part of our economy. And we don't need to let it go to the wayside. And then we have our game fish, our recreational fishery. We have people come all around the world to come down and fish for these things. I strongly believe that we have some of the best recreational fishing in the entire Gulf Coast. Louisiana is right next to us. They have amazing fishing too. But I'll put it against Florida any day. We have some wonderful fishing here, and it's important that we keep it that way. And it's income. It's income for the state and the people that live here. All right, so the rivers that we have in the state. We have, just talk about the coastline briefly, we have 44 miles of coastline. If you add up all the little surface area, all the nooks and crannies of the marsh, adds up to 359 miles. We have 4 major river basins and a lot of other smaller river basins. We have the Pascagoula River Basin here, the Tombigbee River Basin, the Big Yazoo River Basin, and the Pearl right here. There's Jackson right there. And tens of thousands of people travel here to fish on these rivers and the coast. So, we have everything we need as far as natural fishing and all these things to create dollars for our state. And the Pascagoula River, believe it or not, is the last major river in the entire United States without a dam on it. The lower United States. Sorry, Alaska has big rivers, but within the lower 48 states, this is the last major river without a dam on it. And nobody believes me when I say that, so I always put this slide in, showing this is a publication done in Science Journal by Dionysus and Nielsen, showing that within the entire United States, the dark area is very heavily affected rivers with impoundments, dams on them, impoundments of any sort, of any type. Okay, these are the dry areas. They don't have major rivers. See, out west in Texas, they don't have rivers large enough to be called major rivers. Okay, large discharge. In Florida, either they just don't have larger, big drainage rivers. And you can see right there, Pascagoula is the diamond that's left. It's the last major river in the United States. This slide doesn't come out well, but there's some rivers up here. This is actually shaded as moderately affected. Those aren't clear like the Pascagoula right here. The Pascagoula is the last river left. And we need to protect that, and we should be real proud of that we have it in our state. Okay, so just to compare them nationally, what we got? Pascagoula's top 5 in the nation as far as water quality. Okay, top 5 in the nation as far as toxins and everything. Pascagoula's up there. Hattiesburg, Petal, their water supply up there is top 5 cleanest water supply in the nation. Pretty amazing. Tallahassee Creek, I always put this in here. This is a success story. It's a small little creek. It's just east of Petal. Used to be a large masonite factory on it. A lot of pollutants went into Tallahassee. Once they figured it out, they cleaned up the creek. It's a success story. It's a very beautiful creek. It's clean now. The fish are healthy. So we have success stories in our state as well. So it's nice to see that we have all these different things. Okay, so I'm a fish ecologist, and more specifically, I specialize in anadromous ecology, and I study the fishes that go from the marine environment up to the freshwater, come up these rivers to spawn, and then go back out to the marine environment. So I've always done a lot of research in that area. And this is our state and the endangered and threatened species within our state of fishes. So we got a lot of darters here, shiners, and 2 sturgeons, and then the Alabama shad here. And the ones in blue are the ones I'm going to talk about today, just to give you all some background information of how rare these things are and that we have them in our state. And hopefully you'll find it interesting as I do in the past work that I've done. So I just have a couple of images here of pearl darter. And this is a big Gulf sturgeon here, and this is the Alabama shad here. So I'll just talk about these 4, and that'll pretty much be it. I'll take questions at the end, and hopefully everybody can learn a little something about our rare species. Okay, so the first one I'm going to talk about is the pearl darter. It's a very small fish. They really don't ever get much longer than that, about the width of your hand. They live in the rivers. I completed a survey on the Pascagoula and pearl drainages. Back in 2001 through 2007 did the Pascagoula with Todd Slack, and then here recently did it on the Pearl River. And actually, the pearl darter was found just lots and lots of in the Pascagoula. Remember, like I said, it's a natural system. There are no dams on it. This species, the river looks just like it did thousands of years ago. The species is very healthy. They have a strong presence in this river. Very viable population. In the Pearl River, sadly to say, went there for 2 years, never collected any. No one's collected any, so it's assumed extirpated from that system. There are no longer any pearl darters within that system. And sadly to say, because the fish is actually named after the system, the pearl darter. And reasons why this happened, we can convey that probably, and we know that the pearl darter is a habitat specialist. This small fish needs exact habitat types for completing their life cycle and reproduction and growing and all that thing. And in the Pearl River here, when the navigation sills went in and the big impoundment up in Jackson for the Ross Barnett Reservoir, when you block the movements of these fish within the river and you change the habitats enough, you slow the water down by blocking it, all the particulates fall out, the bottom no longer seems clean like sand and gravel. When the habitat just changes a little bit, because this is a habitat specialist, probably was the cause of the extirpation of this species. And you can see here, there was presence. These are all old collections, historical localities of pearl darters collected, and this is the Pearl River right here running up to Jackson. And this is the Pascagoula here. So it's old collections and new collections. So the Pascagoula is doing great. We got the pearl darter in the river. It's a very strong presence. There's the Chickasahee River running up here, and the Leaf River running up to Hattiesburg. It's a very strong presence within that basin. So sadly, maybe later on, the pearl darter can establish itself maybe back in this river later on if the sills may be removed, or if we just learn enough about the rivers that we can increase flow and mimic natural flows and have natural habitats that can allow this species to return. But the Pascagoula is the last known population of pearl darter on the planet. And it's in our state. So it's a really neat thing that we have it that way. And we should try to keep it that way. All right, so next is the crystal darter. This is an endangered darter as well. It's a little bit bigger. It's skinnier than the pearl darter, but they get longer. They disappeared from the Pascagoula and many other drainages, mostly in the 60s and 70s. We don't really understand a whole lot about why that happened. The Pascagoula, like I said, it's a very natural system, but they used to be in that system, and they're no longer there. So we're always trying to study and learn more about this fish and why that happened. But interestingly, as ecologists, we get very excited about these types of things. The crystal darter is still present in the Pearl and Tombigbee rivers. And these are two rivers within our state, and as you know, both of them have impoundments on it. The Pearl with those sills and that dam in Jackson, and the Tombigbee has the lock system for navigational purposes that runs all the way up to Tennessee. These big blockades blocking the water. This is an image of the Tombigbee. See how altered it is. This is a lock system, so they can raise the water and allow barges to come through. But the crystal darter is very strong presence within this drainage. These two drainages, which is it's really interesting why, because the water slowed down, the habitat changed, that they're still present within this system. And actually, a little bit of research that's been done, they ecologically adapted to these changes, which is really rare. It really doesn't happen very much in nature. So it's very interesting as well. You can see that this fish, this is a crystal darter here. The mouth is kind of subterminal, kind of pointing down. You can see it's on the bottom. So when you do slow flows down and you don't have that nice clean water going over the bottom all the time, you lose this nice clean gravel. It becomes kind of muddy and silty. And you would think it would just knock it out kind of like the pearl darter that I showed earlier. But actually this species of fish came up off the bottom, and we call that, we see them swimming called benthopelagic, which means they're no longer on the bottom benthic feeders. They're actually halfway up in the water column swimming around, just changed their lifestyle and became successful in this altered system. It's very interesting. And their entire diet changed as well. So they started feeding on different things because the bottom habitat changed. So still strong presence within those. It's really interesting, but they have been removed from a lot of other systems, and at this point they are listed as endangered. Okay, the Gulf sturgeon I'm going to talk a little bit about. This is actually what I'm working on right now at Gulf Coast Research Lab. And Mark Peterson talked earlier about it. I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the more interesting aspects of the ecology. They're still present in the Pearl and Pascagoula rivers. So these two rivers we have on the coast, the Pearl over there comes out around Long Beach and past Christian, and then the Pascagoula come out over here. Very strong presence still within the systems. Low numbers, but we are catching them in both systems and still present within those systems. They are anadromous, and that actually means, like I said before, they live out in the Gulf of Mexico, and they're swimming all the way up these rivers, all the way to Hattiesburg to spawn, and then they go back down and hang out in the holding area. And we found out that Gulf sturgeon are eating out in the Gulf of Mexico, and then when they're making their runs up to Hattiesburg and then staying up to 8 months within this holding area, they're not eating the entire time. And as an ecologist, it almost kind of bugs you why something would do that, because it just doesn't seem very smart to lose that much body weight and only eat 3 months of the year and make long migrations upriver like a treadmill and then spend 8 months just not eating and hanging out. So we try to figure out why this happens. And this is data here from a paper done by Ryan Heisey, a great biologist here, who showed that this is actually Black Creek where it dumps into Pascagoula. We actually call that Dead Lake where it dumps in. And the sturgeon they absolutely love it. They just love sitting right there. So once they spawn, they go back down, they hang out in this holding area. Long, long time they hang out. They're not eating, they're not doing anything. So it's very interesting for us to study and to think about why these fish would do that. And I love having discussions about it because somebody comes up with something. You don't have to be a scientist, and it sparks my interest and gets my wheels turning. So it's really interesting why a fish would do that. They're very long-lived. They live for many, many, many years, and they mature very slowly. And those two things right there are bad news for the species. Because it takes them a very long time to grow up, because it takes them a long time to reach sexual maturity, when problems happen, usually species get knocked out really quickly. So that's bad news for that species of fish. But it's my current project right now. I've just completely fallen in love with it. It's a lot of fun to look at and to figure out what's going on within their life history in these different systems.